Welcome, Madam Secretary. Mahalo, as we say in Hawaii, thank you for your work to uplift all Native Americans. During your time in Congress and now as the Secretary of the Interior, you have repeatedly worked to appropriately include Native Hawaiians in federal policies, regulations, and law, including in the recent report on federal Indian boarding schools that shone some light on the abuse inflicted on Native children in an attempt to kill Native culture, language, and identity. Your work demonstrates the importance of honoring the federal government's trust responsibility owed to all Native Americans. Of course, that includes American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians. I hope that you will continue to improve the department's efforts to appropriately include Native Hawaiians in federal programs and the department's work in the Native Hawaiian community. In particular, I hope the department and its partners will include Native Hawaiians in its work to address the crisis around missing and murdered Indigenous people. In honoring National Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Day in May 5th, this May 5th, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs shared the following information about Hawaii. Native Hawaiian women and girls represent 67% to 77% of sex trafficking victims identified in recent studies. Native Hawaiians also represent 37% of reported child sex trafficking cases. These numbers are appalling and unacceptable. I ask you to join me in working together to address this urgent problem and to end this abuse against Native Hawaiians. Thank you for your commitment. Madam Secretary, I appreciate the funding that the administration is requesting in the fiscal year 23 budget to pay for our obligations under the Compacts of Free Association. As you know, should negotiations not conclude before financial assistance provisions of the compacts expire in 2023 and 2024, that financial assistance will end. Thus, there is a sense of urgency to completing these negotiations in a timely manner. Our committee recently held a hearing to discuss the nomination of Ambassador Cantor to serve as Assistant Secretary of Insular and International Affairs. Could you talk briefly about the importance of confirming Ambassador Cantor in ensuring that the compact negotiations be concluded in a timely manner, and how else can Congress help the administration's efforts to extend these compacts?
Thank you so much. And yes, the President has nominated an excellent candidate, and we're doing all we can to support her confirmation process. I also recognize the priority for national security and economic reasons as to the, and that's why we need to move this forward. I met with Ambassador Yoon, who is working on this issue as well, and feels very positive that he can move forward with it in an expeditious manner. It's a priority for us, Senator, and I just want to assure you that we're treating it as such.
Thank you, because it is very clear that these compacts are critical aspects of our national security, and those issues come before the Armed Services Committee, but the compact itself and the negotiations come to you and to the State Department, so there's a sort of a bifurcation. It's really important for everyone to be working together to make sure that these compacts are negotiated fairly and that we live up to our obligations to our compact friends. The DOI's announcement earlier this week that over $14 million from the bipartisan infrastructure law are being directed toward efforts to save our remaining Native Hawaiian forest birds, and that was welcome news. In order to prevent these species from going extinct, we must control the mosquito population that is spreading deadly avian malaria throughout these populations, while also translocating and breeding the remaining few native birds. And unfortunately, as in so many of these kinds of situations, time is not on our side. Can you discuss how the fiscal year 23 budget complements those infrastructure funds to ensure that the department can carry out these efforts? And also, can you discuss how the various bureaus, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Park Service, U.S. Geological Survey, are all working together to protect these species?
Thank you, Senator. And yes, your forest birds are incredibly important to us. We know how important they are to the ecosystem. Everything works together. And very happy to have partners with which to work to create safe havens for the birds. That also means controlling the mosquitoes that carry that malaria. We want to establish captive populations. That would be buying time, finding new ground for the birds, new places for them to thrive, and of course developing the next generation tools to eradicate the mosquitoes. We absolutely appreciate the cultural importance of the birds that you have in Hawaii, and we're working on the ground with folks there who know the landscape and who know the ecosystem so that we can do the best job possible.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, it is wonderful to have a secretary who understands the importance of cultural issues and environmental protections that are all part and parcel of making sure that we pay appropriate attention to these issues. And thank you very much, Madam Secretary, for your commitment.